We're now joined by Brian Howell. Brian writes again for the Boulder Daily Camera, also buffzone.com. We had him on earlier to kind of just get an early reconnaissance of what's happening with the Buffaloes and gave us some great insight and even more now. Brian, thanks for your time. I think there's another meeting tonight with the administration or Board of Regents. Is that correct?
Yeah, this will be their second one this week where basically they're getting together in athletics, basically giving them an update on what's going on. And just, obviously there's scenarios out there. There are, and they're just kind of updating the reasons on what's going on with kind of the landscape of college athletics at this point.
I have been told that nobody specifically has been given like an actual offer to join any conference other than obviously what USC and UCLA are dealing with right now and have accepted. Have you heard otherwise?
I have not. I have not heard anything about anyone receiving any offers. Obviously, there's rumors that are being reported, but I have not heard anything concrete about anyone getting an offer at this point.
I didn't either. And that's something that, of course, there's a lot out there as well. Brian Howell with us, Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports on Colorado and their situation and perspective today.
Brian, what would you say people are leaning towards in Boulder right now?
As far as which conference they go to?
Yes.
I'm not sure if there's a preference one way or another. I think more than anything, it's just how relevant is Colorado going to be and how much money can they make? And I think that's what Colorado's got to look at. I mean, you have some people that like the Pac-12 and they like the West Coast feel there and it's a good fit and things like that. And then you have some people that are sort of nostalgic for some of the Big 12 rivalries that have not been there for the Buffs in the last dozen years or so. And so I think there's kind of mixed feelings either way from fans.
Brian, you mentioned that it has not been good. Really, if you think about it, you look at Nebraska, not as good. Colorado, not as good. Missouri, probably not as good. A&M looks like they're on the uptick, but and they've had some huge moments, but not as good. They're about what they always were.
They're laterally
in a conference, the Big 12 rather than the SEC. You mentioned, you wrote about speaking with Chuck Neinas. This guy was brilliant. He helped the Big 12 in a really bad moment back, 12 years ago. What were some of the things perspective or maybe knowledge and insight he gave you on what Colorado, the Pac-12 teams, or the Big 12 in general could be looking at?
Yeah, it's interesting because he's 90 years old and not involved anymore, but that guy is sharp as a tack and, still very much plugged in. And, he's watching this as interestingly as all of us are. And, really, basically what he said is it's not any earth-shattering, revelation here, but it's all driven by TV, and it's just kind of whatever happens, whatever TV wants, that's what's going to happen. And he's like the rest of us and not knowing exactly what's going to happen, but he's been very involved, obviously, and knows how much TV is involved with this. I mean, TV is what drove the creation of the Big 12 in general, right? I mean, with ESPN, wanting to create this conference between the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference. So he knows all that, and it's going to be driven by that. And that's what's driving it so far is TV. So, and Chuck's experience is that. It's TV, and you go where the money is.
He ought to have a statue outside Big 12 Conference headquarters. Yeah. I know we're always leery of statues. He's 90.
Yeah.
And he was a part of the savior of the Big 12 when they were just kind of just splattered against like a mosquito net.
Brian, and I'm sure you remember this when the Big 12, broke up the first time when everybody left. The schools were kind of in a tenuous partnership. When they broke up, when Texas and Oklahoma left, the remaining 8 were in a very strong partnership, and that's what led them forward. How do you feel that the Pac-10, I guess they are the Pac-10 again, the remaining 10 of the Pac are they united, or is it tenuous and holding on by a thread?
I think they're fairly united, but open to other things. I think that's part of why, earlier this week you saw the Pac-12 announce that, hey, we're going to open up our negotiations for media rights now as opposed to waiting. Is that I think, all the schools are value now. And I think there's probably a lot of that group, and Colorado may be involved in that. In this thinking as well, that, hey, if we can, let's stay together. And I haven't been able to talk to anybody in Colorado. They're pretty closed off. But I think that might be the general sentiment is if we can, let's stay together. Let's find out what our value is. And I think that's why I don't foresee any decisions coming, imminently, because I think the Pac-12 wants to find out, what are we worth? Is it better for us to stay here, or is it better for us to leave?
You mentioned in some of your tweets you had a chance to visit with Joel Klatt, who's been able, and of course he's an opinion that a lot of people do trust in college football. He's a Fox broadcaster and obviously played there at Colorado. What does he see, and what is his idea, or what are his opinions?
Yeah, Klatt's an interesting one because he is very much out there, as far as a voice in college football. I love talking to him because he's got a lot of great ideas. And a lot of people that you talk to about college sports, they'll complain about the way it's going or whatever, but they don't really have ideas. Where Klatt's got so many ideas. In fact, he joked at one point during our conversation and said, "Hey, I'm just throwing a lot of stuff out you. I don't know how you're going to make much sense of this," but it was great to talk to him because he's got so many thoughts and ideas. But the bottom line is, he said this to me: is look, eventually this is going to be 4 conferences, and we already know which 2 of them, are going to lead this whole thing: the Big Ten, SEC. Now, between the ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, some semblance of that is going to wind up in 2 conferences, and how that shakes out, who knows? But that's his belief, and I kind of agree with him. I think that it's going to be that lead tier, Big Ten, SEC, and then sort of maybe a middle class second tier with 2 other conferences. And it could be the Big 12, ACC, Pac-12, whatever it is.
Brian, thank you. I know you got a lot going on. We appreciate it. I thought the interview with Chuck Neinas was great get for you. Appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Brian Howell, Boulder Daily Camera, buffzone.com. And they do have another meeting tonight, probably just an update as a Friday evening. It was a week ago when Brett Yormark had his, I don't know if it was Zoom. It was not in person, most likely Zoom or whatever, with the ADs of the Big 12. And that was the day after the next explosion in college football with USC and also UCLA.